John Lennon is undeniably one of the most influential figures in pop culture and music. Alongside Paul McCartney, he forms an iconic songwriting duo that is widely regarded as the greatest of all time. As a member of the Beatles, he even claimed to be more popular than Jesus. His anti-war activism made him a prominent figure during his era, and his solo career produced timeless hits that are instantly recognizable, such as the iconic song Imagine. However, despite his immense success and fame, Lennon's personal life was plagued by constant turmoil and unfortunate events. Whether it was the result of unfortunate circumstances or his own sometimes unpleasant demeanor, his life was far from idyllic. Let us delve into the darker aspects of this controversial ex-Beatles life, revealing the tragic reality of John Lennon. The tragic events surrounding John Lennon's life cannot be discussed without acknowledging the manner in which his life came to an end. Lennon was infamously assassinated by Mark David Chapman, who fatally shot the 40-year-old musician in front of his own residence on December 8, 1980. Interestingly, this was not the first encounter between Lennon and Chapman. Earlier that day, around 4:30 p.m., a young and seemingly timid fan approached Lennon on the street. This fan, later revealed to be Chapman, asked Lennon to sign his copy of the Double Fantasy album, while his friend Paul Goresh captured a few photographs of the two together. Tragically, just over 6 hours later, Chapman fired 5 hollow-point bullets at Lennon, all while still holding the autographed album. Chapman targeted Lennon solely because of his fame, driven by a desire for attention. His motivation can be summed up as seeking recognition. Despite Lennon's kindness towards him, Chapman proceeded with his heinous act. Over time, Chapman has expressed remorse for his crime. In a peculiar twist of fate, the day of Lennon's death also produced one of the most iconic images of his life, one that notably excludes Chapman. Merely hours before his untimely demise, renowned photographer Annie Leibovitz captured the famous Rolling Stone cover photo, featuring a nude Lennon embracing a clothed Yoko Ono on the floor. Despite being an esteemed artist and a prominent advocate for peace, John Lennon had a dark side in his private life, displaying violent behavior towards the women he was involved with, especially during his younger years. In 1980, Lennon openly admitted to being a domestic abuser and confessed to physically assaulting his ex-wife, Cynthia Lennon. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which depicted cruelty towards women and keeping them away from their passions, were autobiographical. Lennon confessed, "I was a hitter. I couldn't express myself and I hit." While Lennon claimed to sincerely believe in love and peace and claimed to have transformed into a better person, his history of domestic violence poses a significant dilemma for fans who value social consciousness. Furthermore, there have been speculations about whether Lennon's violent tendencies extended to his firstborn child, Julian Lennon. Although Julian himself has not explicitly addressed this, he has referred to his father as a hypocrite who failed to demonstrate the love and peace he preached to others. The Beatles, as pioneers of rock and pop music, are not typically associated with plagiarism. In fact, it is often assumed that they are the ones being imitated. However, 101.5 WPDH reported an incident where John Lennon was accused of being overly inspired by another song. The song in question was Come Together, a prominent track on Abbey Road and one of the band's most iconic songs. Music producer Morris Levi filed a lawsuit claiming that Lennon had plagiarized Come Together from Chuck Berry's 1956 song You Can't Catch Me. While Lennon acknowledged drawing influence from Berry's work, Levi alleged that Lennon had simply slowed down the original song and passed it off as his own. There were even similarities in the lyrics of both songs. Lennon eventually settled the lawsuit out of court, but continued to have legal disputes with Levi over the terms of the agreement. Levi took Lennon to court for not fulfilling one of the songs required in the settlement, and Lennon retaliated when Levi released unauthorized recordings. In the summer of 1973, John Lennon's marriage to Yoko Ono was facing difficulties. According to Ultimate Classic Rock, they were dealing with the disappointment of Lennon's Ono-produced album, Sometime in New York City, which received negative reviews and failed commercially. Ono, in an interview with The Telegraph, expressed how the constant criticism and hatred towards their relationship were gradually damaging their careers and her own well-being. Ono desired a break from the persistent notion that she was responsible for the Beatles' breakup, and she also felt the need for some distance from Lennon. Her solution was to arrange an affair for Lennon with a woman. May Pang, an assistant to Ono and Lennon, was chosen by Ono due to her trust in her and her awareness of Lennon's attraction towards her. Ono suggested that they should engage in an affair. However, Lennon's perspective on the affair was excessive, to say the least. The musician and Pang secretly traveled to Los Angeles, where Lennon, now free from his marital obligations, indulged in his vices. He heavily consumed alcohol and embraced a wild lifestyle reminiscent of Motley Crue for nearly 2 years. Eventually, in 1975, Lennon and Ono decided to reconcile and start afresh. During this period, known as the Lost Weekend, Lennon managed to complete 3 albums, although the creative process was often accompanied by alcohol and peculiar behavior. It didn't help matters that one of the albums, Rock 'N' Roll, was produced by the unpredictable Phil Spector, who frequently appeared in eccentric outfits and even fired a gun into the ceiling on one occasion. John Lennon had a strong affinity for drugs, and according to Salon, one particular drug may have played a role in the breakup of the Beatles. In 1969, Lennon was heavily addicted to heroin, a time when the Fab Four was already facing numerous interpersonal issues. Opioid addiction was not well understood during that period, and George Harrison, Paul McCartney, and Ringo Starr became increasingly concerned as Lennon and Yoko Ono openly indulged in the drug, which they perceived as being much more extreme than they were willing to engage in. Lennon attributed their heroin use to the profound pain they experienced after Ono's miscarriage in 1968, although some suggest that he had started using earlier. He also claimed that heroin was his way of rebelling against the other Beatles and their reluctance to fully accept Ono as an equal. Regardless of the origin of Lennon's addiction, his heroin use and the accompanying mood swings became a significant problem after a serious car accident in Scotland. By the time the band began recording Abbey Road, the other 3 Beatles had to tread carefully around Lennon due to his explosive outbursts. They were unwilling to challenge his insistence on having Ono present in the studio, as they could see that their bandmate was in pain. The Beatles did not last long after the release of Abbey Road. However, both Ono and Lennon eventually quit using heroin. One of the most tragic moments in the life of John Lennon occurred on July 15, 1958. According to the Beatles' Bible, his mother, Julia Lennon, met her untimely demise in a freak accident. Despite living with his aunt and uncle, John shared a close bond with his mother. She supported his musical aspirations and even gifted him his first guitar. Imagine the shock that engulfed the 17-year-old Lennon when his mother left his aunt's house, only to be fatally struck by an off-duty policeman while crossing a road on her way to the bus stop. The impact was instantaneous, and Julia lost her life in an instant. The policeman involved, Eric Clegg, vehemently denied any wrongdoing, asserting that Mrs. Lennon suddenly darted in front of his vehicle, leaving him unable to avoid the collision. He adamantly denied any speeding or intoxication, despite the allegations. Clegg described the incident as one of those tragic occurrences that are beyond anyone's control. This event had a profoundly traumatic effect on Lennon, and the subsequent fame he achieved ensured that he would constantly be reminded of the horrific accident. Eventually, Clegg resigned from his position and took up a job as a postman. However, fate had a cruel twist in store for him, as he discovered that one of the houses on his delivery route belonged to none other than Paul McCartney, a bandmate of the very person whose mother he had unintentionally taken the life of. It seems that certain memories are inescapable, no matter how hard one tries. George Toogood Smith, John Lennon's uncle by marriage, was appropriately named as he was truly exceptional. As stated on the St. Peter's Woolton Heritage Site, Lennon spent most of his childhood living with Smith, a dairy farmer, and his wife, Mary Elizabeth Stanley, who was Lennon's aunt. Smith played a crucial role in Lennon's life, acting as a father figure and influencing him greatly. He taught the young Lennon how to read, paint, and draw, and even gifted him a musical instrument, a mouth organ. Sadly, the joyous times came to an end when Smith passed away in 1955 at the age of 52 due to a liver hemorrhage. Smith's legacy lives on, with his grave being lovingly restored and unveiled in 2015 as part of Lennon's 75th birthday celebrations, as reported by the Liverpool Echo. Interestingly, Smith's death may have indirectly inspired the Beatles' classic song Eleanor Rigby. The BBC notes that the churchyard where Smith was buried also housed the grave of a maid named Eleanor Rigby. Both Lennon and Paul McCartney frequented the churchyard, and while McCartney claims to have created the character's name, some believe he may have unconsciously drawn inspiration from the gravestone. John Lennon's relationship with his father was strained. Alfred Lennon separated from Julia Lennon in 1944, for years after John's birth. Lennon mentioned that he never truly knew his father and only saw him occasionally after becoming famous. Their reunion was not successful, with Lennon deciding that he still did not want to establish a connection with him. In 1965, during the Beatles' peak, talent manager Tony Cartwright discovered Alfred working at a pub and transformed him into Fred Lennon, aiming to launch his music career. However, John Lennon was not pleased with his father's debut album and requested his manager Brian Epstein to intervene. Alfred Lennon's singing career ended shortly after, with no success in the music charts. John Lennon encountered his father one last time in 1970, where he expressed his anger and regret towards Alfred. Alfred passed away in 1975, leaving Lennon with remorse over their final encounter. Lennon met Cynthia Powell in 1957 at Liverpool College of Art. Despite being initially intimidated by Lennon, Powell learned he was infatuated with Brigitte Bardot and dyed her hair blonde to catch his attention. Although she was engaged, Lennon asked her out, and when she declined his proposal, he became angry. Powell often accompanied him to gigs and traveled with McCartney's girlfriend to visit Lennon in Hamburg. Lennon's jealous and possessive nature led to instances of terrifying anger towards Powell. However, he apologized and they reunited, with Lennon no longer physically abusive but still verbally harsh. He later acknowledged his chauvinistic attitude towards women and expressed regret for his past behavior. In July 1962, Lennon decided to marry Cynthia when he learned she was pregnant. They got married on August 23 in Liverpool, with Brian Epstein as the best man. Their marriage coincided with the rise of Beatlemania. Epstein advised them to keep their marriage a secret to avoid alienating fans. Despite being on tour, Lennon didn't meet his newborn son Julian until 3 days after his birth. Cynthia believed Lennon's use of LSD caused their marriage to break down. The incident at a train station in Wales symbolized the end of their relationship. After a holiday in Greece, Cynthia returned home to find Lennon with Yoko Ono, causing her to leave. Lennon sought a divorce and custody of Julian. Eventually, they settled out of court, with Cynthia receiving £100,000 and custody of their son. Lennon met Yoko Ono in November 1966 at the Indica Gallery in London. They were introduced by gallery owner John Dunbar. Lennon was intrigued by Ono's artwork, particularly her piece Hammer a Nail. However, Ono stopped him from hammering a nail into a clean board. Lennon's status as a millionaire impressed Dunbar, who thought Lennon might buy the artwork. Lennon jokingly offered to pay Ono an imaginary 5 shillings and hammer an imaginary nail instead. Ono later revealed that Lennon had taken a bite out of an apple in her artwork, angering her. Ono started calling and visiting Lennon at his home, leading to conflicts with his wife Cynthia. While Cynthia was away on vacation, Lennon and Ono recorded the Two Virgins album and became intimate. When Cynthia returned, she found Ono wearing her bathrobe and drinking tea with Lennon. Ono became pregnant in 1968, but sadly miscarried a few weeks after Lennon's divorce from Cynthia. Before the Beatles disbanded, Lennon and Ono protested against the Vietnam War and got married in Gibraltar in 1969. They went on a honeymoon in Amsterdam where they held a week-long bed-in for peace at the Hilton Hotel. Unable to hold another bed-in in the US, they held one at the Queen Elizabeth Hotel in Montreal where they recorded the song Give Peace a Chance. They also introduced Bagism during a press conference in Vienna. Lennon officially added Ono as a middle name and the couple settled in Berkshire. Later, they moved to New York and lived at the Dakota apartment building overlooking Central Park. The passing of John Lennon is not just a great loss for the music industry, but for the entire world. Lennon was not just a talented musician, but also a visionary, an activist, and a symbol of peace and love. As one of the founding members of the legendary band, the Beatles, Lennon's contributions to music are immeasurable. His songwriting skills and unique musical style revolutionized the industry and continue to inspire countless artists to this day. From iconic hits like Imagine and Hey Jude to experimental tracks like Strawberry Fields Forever, Lennon's music transcended genres and touched the hearts of millions around the globe. Beyond his musical achievements, Lennon used his platform to advocate for peace and social justice. He was an outspoken critic of war, inequality, and injustice, using his fame to raise awareness and promote positive change. His activism and commitment to making the world a better place made him a true icon and role model for generations to come. Lennon's tragic and untimely death on December 8, 1980, shocked the world and left a void that can never be filled. His loss was deeply felt by fans, fellow musicians, and activists alike, as his influence extended far beyond the realm of music. The impact of his absence is still felt today, as his messages of love, peace, and unity remain as relevant as ever. Despite his passing, Lennon's legacy lives on. His music continues to be celebrated and cherished, and his ideals continue to inspire people to strive for a better world. His words, "Imagine all the people living life in peace," continue to resonate and serve as a reminder of the power of music and the importance of working towards a more harmonious society. In conclusion, the passing of John Lennon is not just a great loss in the realm of music, but a loss for humanity as a whole. His talent, activism, and vision continue to inspire and influence countless individuals, ensuring that his legacy will never be forgotten.